anxious to step through the gate again, Major?
Yes, I am.
We all are.
Would you like us to bring back anything special?
No thanks.
Groceries, new outfit, flatware?
No, just yourselves in one piece, please. Dial it up. Be safe.
Welcome to the Jumping Puddles podcast. Be sure to listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and or YouTube. And follow us at Jumping Puddles Podcast on Tumblr and Instagram, and Jumping Pud Pod on Twitter. And if you want to support us, check out our Ko-Fi. Hi, I'm Sam, and with me are my fellow co-hosts, Tor and Ash.
Hey! And today we are discussing the Season 2 episode, Trinity. McKay puts the team at risk when he tries to perfect unfinished ancient technology that wiped out a civilization. Meanwhile, Ronan Dex discovers that he's not the lone survivor from his world.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun. We always get the ending. It's just never the beginning.
Yeah.
This episode, if any episode, truly deserves the dun 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 after its summary.
Yeah, it's definitely... It's the divorce era. We've entered it, unfortunately.
Yeah, everything that can go wrong will go wrong, especially our interpersonal relationships.
Oh,
Everyone's
that's
beefing.
true. That's true.
Yeah. I feel like this episode is very much half of it is the Rodney McKay show. Okay, I want to say 3/4 of it is the Rodney McKay show, and then like 1/4 of it is the Ronan show. But more like the Ronan and Teyla show. But the relationships at center focus are definitely John and Rodney, and Teyla and Ronan as pairs, with a little like spicy dash of Zelenka and Rodney. And most importantly, in my opinion, Elizabeth and Rodney as well.
Such interesting relationships.
Very.
Where to even begin? Truly. How do we unpack this ginormous ball of yarn? Like, maybe we should start with the happiness before we delve into...
There was happiness.
Yeah, I mean, so the episode starts with the ensemble together, of course. Our gate team, Ronan, John, Rodney, and Teyla in the jumper. And I think their conversation is really funny. Particularly the part where Rodney says he's eaten frozen dinners, like frozen. I don't think I've ever met anybody who has not thawed their frozen dinner before. And it's kind of made me, my lazy ass, want to attempt this. And see if it tastes okay.
Did you?
No, I haven't yet. But
We're literally getting a message from Tor's parents to be like, yeah, she's in the hospital. This bitch tried to eat fucking frozen dinners without thawing them. She saw it on TV, and we're gonna be like, we're so sorry we supported her. So no, I'm not supporting your endeavors. Do not try this at home. No. And you don't have the Rodney McKay stomach, bitch. We know.
No.
We know. None of us do. We have the weak bitch stomach. We're on the opposite side of the timeline.
Oh yeah. I think Ronan could do it though. Ronan for sure.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no question. Yeah.
I think that's how they bond. Rodney just shows up to his room. He's like, hey, you actually don't have to microwave this. You can just eat it. And Ronan's like, oh shit, no way. And they just bond because they just eat unthawed microwave dinner. And like John's like throwing up in the background at the sight. His like bridge chest is like dabbing a napkin on his mouth and just like like one of those Victorian women who's just like in awe of what's going on.
No, but what if Ronan hadn't even considered to thaw the...
Oh.
He was like, oh wait, you're not supposed to eat it like that.
That's how they bond, genuinely.
Teyla and Elizabeth are on a date, by the way. That's why they don't realize any of that is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
They're having
Also,
actual cooked food.
Yeah.
Well, they tried.
Oh, yeah. True.
Oh. tried. It's funny how they would never even consider that as an option. They're using like all of their brain cells, and them three idiots over here, like,
Don't even have one combined.
yeah, no. Wow, we're already making stuff up again in our Jumping Puddles canon. Less than like 5 minutes in. This is gonna be fucking long. Tune in, folks. Grab a snack. Put us on after work. We'll join you on your ride home.
Yeah.
Or during work.
During work. Ooh, during work.
You're such good influence.
Yeah, of course.
Telling people to eat frozen dinners. No, but I also agree. I freaking love any scene of the team in the jumper in an episode automatically just bumps up a couple of points because I just love how domestic they all are. And I just love this one so much. Rodney trying to give advice. Everyone's just like not like understanding or just not really paying attention, kind of. And Rodney's like, no, like listen to me, like as like first timer or whatever.
As a team veteran.
Yeah, or whatever. He's like trying to be like, oh no, like I got you. And Rodney's just like, okay. Like Rodney's like, who is this like dorky guy trying to give me advice? Kind of. It's so funny. Yeah, no, I love it so much.
Also in the scene after, when they landed and he had just like Ronan, Teyla, and John are just they basically figured out what was going on, and then Rodney is in the background and he just zoned out, and then a second later he's like, oh, I figured it out, and then he's like, yeah, I wasn't listening to you guys, and they were all like, oh Rodney, you're such a but we love you. That's the vibe I got.
Oh yeah. Long suffering, but
100%. I also noticed that scene. It's so funny how they just all just look at each other like, okay. And they don't even bother to correct him. They're not like, we said it first. They're just like, okay. It's like these kind of two scenes that make me a little bit sad that this wasn't like a team episode, right? I think it would have been really fun to see how Teyla and Ronon kind of would have also handled, maybe, quote unquote, Rodney in this situation. I'm sure Ronan would have just picked him up and threw him on his shoulder and dragged him out kicking and screaming. But I would have liked to see it. But it's okay. I do like the pairings that we got.
yeah, for sure. It would have been interesting to see Teyla and Ronan what they would do in that situation. Because they only kind of see like the aftermath of Rodney getting yelled at and nothing else. And they have their own sort of secret that they're keeping hush-hush from everybody. And I think that John's relationship with Rodney is a little bit different from Teyla and Ronan's in the sense that I think this episode proves that he's a little bit less objective in terms of his command with Rodney, whereas Teyla and Ronan maybe would have taken the blinders off of John's eyes and been like, hey, this is not the best situation that we're enabling him to continue on doing. So, yeah, I would love for them to have explored that sort of difference within the team.
You kind of bring up a good point already, not to dive into the nitty-gritty, but John really is blind in love, unfortunately. He's so whipped this episode. Like, painful at times to watch him be so in love with Rodney and, like, kind of let himself like fall into Rodney's words, which, you know, I don't think which is perhaps not like Rodney's intention, maybe. I'm unsure how manipulative we want to make Rodney in this episode. It can go two ways. He can go, he doesn't know the power he has over John, or he does know the power he has over John. Either way, though, I think just watching like Joe's micro expressions throughout this episode is just a fucking treat, and it's just amazing to watch him blindly follow Rodney until it's literally like almost too late. Like they barely survive at the end.
Yeah, and I feel like it's an interesting point in their journey because I feel like historically throughout season 1 and the beginning of season 2, we've seen that John is more than happy to just take Rodney at his word. Like, Rodney can say, yeah, I can do this. And he's like, okay, you can do it. Don't worry, Rodney will fix it. It's fine. He can do it. Like, don't worry. And how that sort of blind trust and blind faith may not always be warranted as much as Rodney is usually the smartest guy in the room. It's interesting to see that facet of their relationship for sure, where the trust that he's had so blindly, I feel like since day one, is sort of broken down through the episode. And they set it up so well because when they're first bringing the science team in to the Arcturus outpost and they are working on the stuff, and Rodney and Zelenka are like going back and forth and explaining things, and there's a scene where John gets excited about what they're talking about. Like, I can't remember exactly what it was. Like, oh yeah, so
Isn't
like
it about... Sorry, go ahead.
they're figuring out basically what the ancients were working on, like the physics harnessing power from another universe to like power this great big weapon thing. And McKay's like, oh, well, I don't want you to get excited over nothing. And then John's like, oh, maybe you're right. And then Rodney's like, okay, I'll tell you. Because he wants to see that expression on his face, like enjoying it as much as Rodney's enjoying the moment and the science and stuff. And then at the end of the episode, where that sort of joy is completely removed from the situation. So I thought that journey was super interesting.
No, I 100% agree, and it's so evil how they kind of did this, but it works to their favor, right? But like, I feel like Sheppard kind of, especially in this episode, right in the beginning, they're just so in sync. Like, they're just so perfectly, like, this is the dream team. This is Elizabeth's, like, two leading guys. These are, like, the team that everyone, like, sees and, like, idolizes and stuff. And you finally kind of see them, like, you know, on the same page. You know, there's so many moments where, like, they're kind of both, like, yeah, like what Tor mentioned, where they're both really getting excited. And John's like, cool. And then he's, like, laughing at, like, Rodney's expression. Like, they're just so... And again, it's just like you're watching it and you just know it's what's coming, or we know what's coming. So if you don't, I hate to break it to you, the divorce happens and it's messy. And again, it heightens, right, what you're feeling by the end of the episode, which is just sad to watch. John, he kind of just puts the wall down, I think we see, and he like takes many steps back from Rodney, and he's like, this is the wall, you breached the wall and you betrayed me, and I don't want that to happen again. And I think there's just so much to dive into in terms of like their personalities and like past trauma and stuff, but I think that last scene just speaks volumes of how not to transition to the last scene already, but yeah, this episode just kind of, I think, just highlights all aspects of their relationship so well. And it makes me so sad that they go from being this perfect team.
Do you think, or do you feel like Rodney abused John's trust in this episode? Because I feel like I love trust. Every time there's like a ship and there's like they have this trust, or trust is like not an issue but like a topic, and you think, oh my god, they trust each other so much, is always like, I'm sold for that. I love that. And I mean, in this episode it's all about trust and about John trusting Rodney and selling Rodney's capabilities to everybody else, mostly to Elizabeth. So yeah, do you think Rodney abused that trust, or?
That is such a good question. And particularly one scene I want to pull on is the Nobel Prize scene. And I think that scene is sort of evidence of Rodney abusing John's trust a little bit. How do I describe this? I feel like historically in the show, Rodney will look to John and be like, you should convince Elizabeth of this. Like, I feel like it happened before in in the Defiant one, where he's, like, telling John, like, oh, just, like, tell her, like, we want to, like, look at the planet, like, while they're on the phone with her when she wants them to come back to Atlantis. And then look how that turned out. And in this episode, a very similar thing happens. So Collins dies at one point, and Elizabeth's like, no, we're not going to do this again. And so instead of going and appealing directly to Elizabeth, Rodney kind of goes over her head and goes to John. And I think he does this on purpose because, you know, with their history, and he's seen evidence of John being like, Rodney will fix it. Rodney can do it. This blind faith that John has in him. And he appeals to Sheppard's trust in him and Sheppard's sympathy to go to bat for him in front of Elizabeth. And the scene makes me happy and angry at the same time because he goes to John's room at night, and John's like trying to give him the tough love act and be like, you're not coming in, I'm mad at you. And Rodney's like telling him the story about one of the scientists on the Manhattan Project and how he died, or he was going to die because he had radiation poisoning working on the bomb. But he continued to work even after he knew he was going to die, so he could figure out what went wrong, how to complete the project, and to make sure it didn't happen to anybody else. And I think him pulling on the Manhattan Project and scientists working on the Manhattan Project as an example is just extremely telling. This was a weapon that was used to kill millions of people. It was not a good thing for science. And so as much as it's horrible that the scientist died in the process of making this thing, it wasn't a positive, life-saving science. And so I think that is telling, but also Rodney pulling on his sympathies again by saying, you know, he doesn't want Colin's death to be a waste and for something to come out of it. So, yeah, like I just feel like that whole story wasn't great. But regardless, Sheppard still goes in for it. He's like, yeah, you know, you're telling me you can fix it? Rodney's like, yeah, I can fix it. He's like, okay, fine. We won't risk anybody. It'll just be you and me, and that's fine. I can convince Elizabeth to do it. And then he goes and does. He goes to Elizabeth himself without Rodney to convince Elizabeth to let them do the thing. Yeah, I do want to say that Rodney was being a little bit manipulative and a little bit betraying Sheppard's trust in this episode for sure.
Agree. It's just, I guess for me, it's just like, I don't know, for some reason I just find it hard to like see Rodney in this sort of manipulative light, you know? Mm-hmm. But like I agree. But like for some reason like my mind like can't like put two and two together that like this is the same Rodney that we know and love. Like it's funny because I feel like I'm not being betrayed, but somehow I am betrayed. Right? And I think it's weird though, because like I'm trying to think, like, does he ever do this sort of thing again? Like, was there any sort of indication that he could be capable of this? Like, I know he was a fucking asshole in SG-1, but
yeah.
He was just petty. He was just a bitch. Like, I don't know if he was like a manipulative bitch. So I think it's interesting that they kind of showed this aspect of Rodney kind of without like, I don't know if there was any sort of indication that he was kind of capable of something like this. I don't know. Maybe I'm just putting too much faith in him, or I don't know. But again, I just feel like it's kind of a character trait they bring out for this app, and I'm just not sure if they ever use it again.
Yeah, I feel like you're right. Historically, I feel like as a character, it's hard to look at Rodney and be like, yeah, he could like talk someone into doing something or like use emotions against somebody, because he himself is very naive, or he's portrayed as naive by characters around him. Like, we're always joking how Ronan is telling him something and he believes him right away. Like, it's like a... So how can someone like that possibly... But I don't know. I feel like that's what he does in this episode. And maybe we can make an argument that the nanite thing... No, we can't, because he just goes over John's head and, like, doesn't tell him what he's doing. So, I don't know. I don't think we ever see him do something like this again, really. I think the only person that he has this sort of power over is John, because of John's trust in him. I really think so. And the line that really gets me is when he's like, I've never asked you for anything. I've never asked you to trust me, but I think I've earned it. So trust me. And it's true. He hasn't been like, I swear, like, I'll do this or whatever to him before. John has just, like, trusted him regardless because of his ability. This is the one time he's asked and that he's been wrong. So it's just painful all around.
I need more fic to kind of explore this aspect of Rodney. And they literally bring it out and they're like, he could do this, and they pull it back and it's just never brought up again. But I think that sort of potential dangerous kind of side to him would be interesting to explore in fic.
Oh, completely.
And I think it's also kind of like a fun role reversal, where I think people probably see John as more of like like he's the one who's like he's the one who has all the cards in his hands, or he's the one who like Rodney's so lucky to have him. Or I think honestly it's kind of the opposite, where I think Rodney has way more power over John, even in the show.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a completely different grasp on the whole thing.
Ooh,
I feel like I'm coming from a bit of a different direction. But for me, the betraying John's trust and manipulating him wasn't the same. Like, to me, it didn't feel like, now what you said with the story with the scientist who died and everything. He was clearly manipulating John, but I didn't feel like he was actively betraying his trust, because, and I think that was Rodney's problem in this episode, that he was so sure of himself, of knowing that or thinking that he was right, and I think he genuinely believed he was right. But the problem was that there was something that neither he nor the ancients understood, and I think he couldn't make that step of understanding that there's something that he can't understand. So he thought he had it right, but he didn't, and that's why he failed. But I didn't feel like he was betraying, like, he was betraying John. He was manipulating him, yes, but he wasn't, to me at least, it didn't feel like he was abusing him in that way.
No, you bring up an excellent point. I feel like it wasn't as if Rodney knew it wasn't going to work and he was trying to convince John that it was. He's a very prideful guy, of course. Rodney and hubris kind of go hand in hand, I feel like. And it's earned. I mean, like, look what he's done historically on the show. And you're right. I think he could just not get over the fact that, like, he thought he got one over on the ancients. Like, he thought that he knew more than the ancients. The ancients got it wrong. And he just could not, like you said, make the connection that, no, like, there is something you're also missing. There's a reason this didn't work. And, yeah, I see what you mean. Because he thought he could do it. And, yes, he manipulated John into getting him to talk to Elizabeth for him, for sure. But, again, you're right. He did think that it would work in the end.
I also think that Colin's death kind of haunted him. So, yes, he was kind of pressing the emotional button there. But I think this is another instance of a scientist, one of Rodney's team, dying. And he basically sent him to his death. Like, he didn't know that he was gonna die, but he said, Collins, go in there and do it manually, or whatever it was. I guess he still knows that he has a responsibility, and he has taken on that responsibility of his team, but still people die. And I think there are several instances in this episode where I think we see that Rodney is not a military guy. The first time is when they first get on the, not station, but on that planet and find that thing, and there are like a bunch of dead bodies. And there's a moment where like Rodney's so excited until there are like dead people, and you realize, like, oh shit. And then he has like, there's like a few seconds where he's like, just, oh my god, help, dead people. While the others are just like, yeah, here's one, there are two others. And then he snaps back and gets back to work. And then later with Collins, I think even though he has been on Atlantis and on this expedition for over a year now, and he has seen people die, people from his team, he's still not good with, I don't know, coping with the death of people, and maybe even, or especially people that he is directly responsible for.
Oh yeah, I think we'd be remiss to say that him saying I want Colin's death to mean something is a lie. Like, it's the truth. We've seen how he's reacted to losing people on his team before, like in the Defiant One again, and Hot Zone.
And Intruder.
Yeah. Like, of course, he would want his death to mean something and for it to be, for the work to go on in honor of the fact that Colin was a scientist. At the same time, I feel like that plays on John's sympathies as a leader as well of people, because he too, like if it was a mission or something, a sort of endeavor, and he lost a person and then just gave up, like how would he feel, sort of thing, like what was for nothing. So I think it plays to John's humanity and the way that he sees team and all that, and so it worked for him in terms of his argument, which is the unfortunate part.
Yes.
But that brings up a whole other thing, which is really interesting about the situation, which Ash, you mentioned just now, this idea that Rodney is a scientist, first and foremost, and the others are sort of more of a military or combat background. So this Arcturus thing is interesting because it's kind of like, okay, scientific process and military progress, because the military is looking at the Arcturus as a weapon to use against the Wraith, or potentially bring back to Earth and use against other people, like the Ori or whoever. Whereas Rodney, as a scientist, I think is not only looking at it from a military perspective as a cool weapon, not, I don't think, realizing exactly what it could be used for, potentially, but also for the scientific endeavor of it to create something that the ancients couldn't, but also as an alternative energy source.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about it being a weapon, it's for defense, it's for life, not only improving life on Atlantis, but on Earth, too. Like, you know, no greenhouse gases, no burning fossil fuels. Like, this is an alternative energy source that would help people. It's not exactly the same thing as the A-bomb, which is only going to be used to kill people. It could have been a good thing. So that makes it even more difficult and more of a gray area.
Yeah, definitely.
This is literally like Rodney's fourth time losing someone from his science team.
Yeah.
In front of him.
In front of him, yeah.
In front of him, not only just losing a member, but like violently too. It's in front of him.
And this time he's like kind of directly responsible. Like he gave the order for him to go in, like you said, Ash, which is, that's bad.
Yeah.
Crazy. So I'm watching Battlestar Galactica right now,
Yeah!
right? So, yay, it's pretty fucking amazing. But now that I'm watching it again, right, so I'm just going to be it's going to be added on to like my little catalog of things I compare it to. But like, I just can't help thinking like, oh yeah, no spoiler. I'll try to be good about that. But everyone should watch it. It's really amazing. No, I just think it's funny that the like whole idea behind Battlestar was like, okay, like what if like we took people in space, but they didn't fix every single one of their problems by the end of the episode. So it's like they continue and they weave through seasons and stuff, right? And so I can't help thinking like, wow, if Rodney was Battlestar Galactica, that whole thing of him losing like team members would be like an arc, like a half a season long arc of him trying to like come to terms with what he's lost. And I think, it makes me sad. Because I think, I don't know, man. I don't know how he's still standing. I don't know. After losing one member of your team violently in front of you by like a wraith, I'd be like, okay, this is enough, right? He's lost 4, and he also, got rid of 5. What is it? 3/4? I don't know, of a solar system. I don't know. He basically destroyed an entire solar. It's like, I don't know. The guilt's got to be weighing on him pretty heavy at this point. Plus, with John's distance. Mm-hmm. And Elizabeth fully yelling at him in front of everyone on the base. Literally, everyone heard. It's like getting yelled at by your mom. Everyone heard him being lectured. Like, I don't know how, girl, if I was me, I'd be like, all right, take me off. Like, I feel like they would take him off off-world missions for a while. I think he'd be grounded. Yeah, so I think it'll be interesting going forward to kind of, like, put, his guilt and all these things we just talked about, and to see if he kind of has some shades of that in the following episodes. So I know that him and John don't make up automatically. It does take them quite a while, I believe. And John doesn't really let him forget it. Like, he'll bring it up sometimes and be like, you blew up the planet. And Rodney's like, well, damn it. Like, I apologize for that. Or, like, something like that. But, like, John is not... John remembers. John is pissed still for quite a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man. Oh, man. It's actually really sad. Like, so we've been kind of looking at it from Rodney's perspective, which is honestly, like, really sad. And I feel really bad for him, how he kind of let, like, guilt and his pride kind of take over his rational thought until it was almost too late. But looking at this from John's perspective, oh my god! John, are you okay? Oh my god! Oh my god!
Yeah.
Like, just kind of crazy. Like knowing how his character is, right? Now, obviously, like, we have yet to kind of, his backstory has yet to be revealed, right? So I'm sure watching this, it was like, oh, John's feeling betrayed. That's sad. But then, like, knowing the context of, like all of these things that, like, have built up, right? Like, his friends dying in war, him trying to save these people, and, like, all of this stuff, I think, kind of just adds on to this episode. And I think you really just kind of feel so bad for him, and he stood up for Rodney in a way that he wouldn't really do for many people. And I think just sort of that betrayal, and after everything kind of being isolated, all this stuff, I just feel so bad for him after this episode. And I think we're kind of pretty far off from this episode too, but it's interesting, right? Because later on, we come up on Epiphany, where he kind of, his abandonment issues are like full front and center for everyone to scrutinize, And so I just feel bad for him.
You bring us something interesting too. I feel like watching this on the outside, it's almost embarrassing. I know it sounds weird to say, but it's kind of embarrassing for John in a way. Thinking of the scene in Elizabeth's office after Rodney plays his case. And Elizabeth is really interesting in this episode too, which I want to touch on when I talk about this. So Elizabeth's like, I made up my mind. I don't want you to do this anymore. And Caldwell is there, of course, representing the military-industrial complex, being like, who cares? Rodney says he can do it. He's confident that he knows where the ancients went wrong. We need this weapon. And hey, you're a civilian. You care about the Earth. So this is good for the planet. Not just weapons, but also global warming. It could stop global warming. And Weir's like, yes, I understand. But confidence is not something that Rodney McKay lacks. She knows this man. She knows Rodney. She knows he can be prideful. She knows his hubris can get the better of him. And she's trying to tell everybody in the room, Rodney McKay is good. He may even be a genius, but he's not omnipotent. He doesn't know everything. We can't just blindly give him all this power and all this faith. Like, we need to check his expectations of himself. We can't one, put this pressure on him, and two, expect him to do all these things. And this can lead to people getting hurt, to him getting hurt emotionally. And she says, I know Rodney McKay, but there are times I have to protect him from himself. And I just love that line for what it says about her, how much she cares about him, how she can see him clearly in a way that John can't because he's got the rose-colored glasses on.
And because John immediately steps up and says, I can do that. I'm like, you're being so polite.
Like, John, no, you cannot. You cannot be objective when it comes to Rodney. Like, you can't say no. Like, no. Exactly. But because John's asking, and he really believes that Rodney can do it, Weir lets them do it. And it's just, it's such good television. It's such good, these characters, man. Like, what it says about Rodney and Elizabeth is just so delicious and so interesting. And I feel like I always joke that John is like the Rodney McKay manager and he knows how to manage Rodney, but I feel like you need John and Elizabeth. Like Elizabeth, like the three of them together are the perfect command team. And this is what happens when they don't listen to Elizabeth. Like, she knows her boys, you know?
Yeah, not to be that person, but if you had listened to the woman.
Yeah.
The leadership trio crumb, like not even crumbs, we're getting a full buffet this season. They said, you guys want more leadership trio? We got you. Starting off with Intruder was a fucking banger, and now this episode, I feel like it's so leadership trio coded. I just love it so much. Thank you. I love it. Crumdiddlyumptious. Give me more.
Oh, yeah.
I love how they act when the three of them are together, or like that scene with all three of them, but I also love to see like the individual relationships, like John Elizabeth, Rodney Elizabeth, and of course John Rodney. It's so interesting, and they're all so different, but so compelling for some reason. And yeah, the scene where Elizabeth is yelling at Rodney it's iconic. I feel like it's truly iconic. During this rewatch, I have really gotten into their friendship. I'm like, it's one of my favorite relationships by now.
Me too.
I was like, oh my god, she's yelling at him. And I feel like, from a professional standpoint, there's gonna be like some icy times approaching for a while. Like, I think, Sam, you said it. But I feel like their friendship is gonna survive this, because their friendship goes back. And I think they have that foundation. It's gonna be a bit rough, but they're gonna make it. So I'm glad about that. To go back to John for a sec, I don't remember who said it, but that it almost hurts to watch him in this episode because he's getting so played. I feel like.
Yeah.
There's also I think they decide at some point that it's gonna be a scientific mission for now, right? So they're shipping a whole bunch of scientists to the project. The only military guy is Sheppard, right? I was like, wait, is he the designated driver? Is he like the muscle man because he's lifting all the heavy boxes? Is he just checking on his boyfriend? Or is it all of the above? I don't know, but man.
That's true. They kind of picture him as like the subservient one in the episode, just by like him carrying the stuff and kind of standing there and listening in on their science talks. Yeah, that's true. I didn't think of it that way.
John never stood a chance.
No.
Boy, Rodney had to give him a little story, turned on the puppy dog eyes, and he said, Elizabeth, please.
He asked me to trust him. Please, John. Please.
Oh, that line.
It's so hard to say no to that story. I get John. Sadly, I get it. Because that's...
Ask me to trust him.
Yeah. Not to go there, but it's like when a girl gets cheated on or a guy gets cheated on and their spouse is like, I'll promise I'll never do it again.
Why?
It's like, that's how I
I'm never the person who is most forgiving towards Rodney, but I feel like in this case I am.
I know.
Like,
We're over here like sharpening our knives, and Ash is like, no, wait.
Because I truly believe that he wasn't trying to, and he's so I think he's not misguided, but he's just so in his head maybe, and so Rodney is extremely smart, so I think he sometimes knows when he's overestimating himself. But I think in this case, he doesn't think that. He truly thinks that he's right and that he can fix it. But there's just something that he doesn't understand, and that's what ruins everything. So I'm not saying he's doing everything right in this episode, but also he's not doing everything wrong.
No, I agree, and I think that's why Elizabeth forgives him, because she knows that about him. Like, she knows, the confidence got to him, his need to prove himself to himself, and to the expedition got to him. It wasn't a malicious thing. He wasn't looking for power or fame, as much as he's talking about the Nobel Prize. It was really about that. It came from a good place.
Yeah, I feel like it was a bit between him and the ancients, and
Yeah.
that he wanted to prove. I don't even know if he wanted to prove it to the others, but mostly to himself, that he's better than the ancient, or that he's just that he's smarter than them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely don't I feel like we'll talk about that later, but I feel like a lot of people probably held a lot of fucking resentment towards Rodney for what happened, which is kind of crazy. I don't think I hold any resentment towards him. However, I kind of, if we're gonna have to pick teams, Team John, Team Rodney. I think I'm just kind of a little more obviously I'm biased towards John, but I'm kind of maybe Team John, maybe / Team Elizabeth. I'm on Elizabeth's corner because I don't think he meant to, right? First of all, I just don't think, I can't see him as being that good at manipulating people. Bitch, that's just not the guy. He does not know how. I just don't think he's really that very capable of doing that. However, I think it's just, he did it though. He did. And even though it was him doing, we can kind of debate how much he really kind of knew. I mean, he did kind of use, again, the story and the words and getting, he knew how to get John on his side. But I think, again, it's just kind of, obviously it's what happens at the end, right? Where it doesn't work, and then John kind of is the one that at fault because he almost got them killed because he trusted Rodney. Again, I think it's just the fact that he can do it is what makes it kind of dangerous. And I think it's kind of an eye-opener for everyone, right? But I think that's another aspect of it too, where he's I let myself get, my judgment got clouded. And it could have killed him, it could have killed me. This whole expedition would be at risk. People are depending on me. I can't let the wall fall as a commander. And he did. And we see it again, though, with John. John's so bad at, when it comes to being the leader versus saving his friends, girl, that man will throw down the wall. He says, he gets emotionally compromised all the time. No matter how many times he says, I have no emotions. Liar. We all see it. But I think that's the part that I just can't, or maybe it's have a harder time forgiving. Yeah, it's just the danger.
And Rodney was a fucking coward for not going to Elizabeth because
exactly. He did it on purpose.
No. But then why is John able to get through to her? He also has a kind of power there.
Oh yeah.
He does.
No,
of course.
Elizabeth, please.
No, stay focused, Elizabeth girl. Well, no, I mean we've seen it. How many times have we seen it throughout the season?
Yeah.
Of John dragging Elizabeth into his war criminal-like behavior.
Yeah.
Weapons trade.
Unfortunately, all he has to do is sit on her desk and be like, please, and she's like, all right, go ahead.
It's the puppy dog eyes.
Dog eyes and little elf ears, and he's just on his little merry way. This is the problem, right? And I think that's kind of what makes Atlantis so much fun too. Is obviously it's they are in leadership positions and stuff. But what is so funny about it, and again, it kind of relates back to, or kind of mirrors DS9, where it's they're all emotionally compromised for each other. The amount of times they will commit war crimes on both shows for each other, or like to save someone else. And they have their own base. Like, they have their own little houses, their own little, like, community. They're kind of separated so they can get away with shit that wouldn't happen at, you know, El Regular Enterprise or, you know, an SG-1 with the military. And it just kind of brings a fun aspect into it where it's like they all are weak for each other, or they're weak for someone. And we kind of, I mean, we can argue about it in circles, but it is kind of a sometimes bad thing that they're willing to go to all these lengths to kind of defend or save one person, you know. And any regular military guy, aka Caldwell, would be like, bitch, what the fuck, like, we're not doing that for one person. And Elizabeth's like, shut up, old man, get on your dead list. Really quick, I do want to talk about Grandpa Caldwell, because he kind of came out swinging to Elizabeth, and I was like, Elizabeth, beat his ass up right now, please. When he drags her, he says, well, she kind of drags him when they're in the office with Caldwell, Elizabeth, and John, and they're kind of going back and forth, and she's like, all you want is the military stuff, like, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no. But then he gets her real good when he says that Elizabeth puts the ancients on a pedestal.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's fair.
It's true.
It's fair.
At
this point, yeah.
But in this case, she was still right.
Yeah.
In this case, I'm not saying she should generally put the ancients on a pedestal, but in this specific scenario, she was right that this was something the ancient couldn't handle, and not because they were over their heads or whatever. There was something going not to, I don't know, normal physics rules, whatever. According to the laws of physics or whatever. So, but yes, that line, I was like, how dare you say something so controversial? It's so true.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was the line where I was like, this is crazy. Because I think it's so interesting that Caldwell, motherfucker, hasn't even been here for longer than like 6 episodes, can already see through her and can see that that's one of her major weaknesses, if not like her number one weakness, number one downfall as a leader, is how she puts her trust in these people.
Yeah, I don't appreciate it.
I know, it's hard to hear that, but damn.
But I think it feeds into their, I think, extremely well played dynamic.
Oh yeah.
I think they kind of just pull each other down on, like, to the floor of reality. You don't say that. I feel like there's a constant power play going on between them. And I've mentioned that, I think, several times before, but I really enjoy watching that. And that includes sometimes telling the truth, and I will always be an Elizabeth defender, and I can watch it and be like, yeah, I know she has flaws, but why? Why are you the one who has to tell her that?
I know. It like stings more coming from him, especially because he's so representative of the military-industrial complex in this episode, especially. Like, he is clearly, like, the stand-in for Earth military. So it's rough having to hear that argument from him, particularly.
But does she reply with, like, oh, doesn't the Dells have to leave or something? Is that in this episode?
She gets him good. She gets him.
Bitch, aren't you out of here?
Bye. But I think, going back to what you said, Sam, that's what makes the show so good. Everyone being emotionally compromised for each other is just what makes this shit work. Because it's true, and we see it every episode, especially in this one. I think she trusts John's judgment in terms of his team's safety. Like, he wouldn't do something or say yes to something that would put Rodney at risk, regardless of Rodney's feelings about it. Like, even if Rodney hated him forever for saying, no, we can't go do it, he wouldn't care. And so that's why she says yes. Of course she trusts John. She knows that he does everything in his power to protect everybody in the expedition. Like, time and time again, she's gone to bat for him in front of the military when they didn't want to bring him back to Atlantis. Like, the love there is real. And so the trust there is real. And, like, this idea that, you know, like, the love conquers all, but it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing in this episode, especially.
And I do love what you mentioned, Tora, that I do love that Caldwell's kind of the representation of the military. And I love that they didn't make John that. Thank you.
Woohoo!
Yes.
Thank you. I love how, I don't want to say anti-military, but this is probably the most anti-military show in the franchise. And I love that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even anti, they're just not present. But it's good. Thank you for kicking their asses out. Get out of my sci-fi show.
Yeah, I feel like John embodies all that makes like a military fiction or any sort of like soldier character interesting. Like, he has the emotional background and he brings all of that compelling stuff to the forefront with his character, but leaves all of the like gross, or most of the gross stuff behind. Like, it's nice to have a military leader that is just a guy. You know, like, he's not like a figurehead for like, oh, the army's great and this is why. Like, no, like, he's just a guy.
Yeah. Watching drop part 2. Watching Battlestar Galactica again. I'm still watching that. Has just really kind of, I don't want to say, it just kind of made me a little more like I feel like before I could like ignore a lot of the US propaganda, like it just pissed me off, but I would like ignore it. But like watching Battlestar, I'm just like, they can do the military type of thing without the US propaganda, as it should be. And so I think coming back to Atlantis, I was just so thankful that John does not give a shit about that.
And I like how his military background plays into the scene on the outpost when it's literally falling down on them. And he's like, okay, we have to leave. And Rodney's like, no, I can do it. And John's like, no, you can't. Like, as soon as, like, mortal danger is happening, he's like, hey, no. Like, your feelings don't matter anymore. We gotta go. Like, you can't do this. So, I just... it's so good because I feel so bad for him. Like, this whole situation is bringing so much trauma back from the past. Like, he literally references it himself. He's like, I've seen this before. Pilots who wouldn't eject when something went wrong in their planes and just crashing and dying. And the fact that it's that story, like Sheppard revealing that part of him and displaying that emotional vulnerability, that gets Rodney to actually stop and be like, okay, yeah, we need to leave. I can't do this. Like, a little bit of redemption right at the end there. Yeah, very spicy, very good.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. So good. So good. Speaking of being down in the bunker, there's a few moments that I just want to just point out really quick. The line where Rodney says, I won't let you down.
Oh,
to John.
Yeah.
And John doesn't even respond. He just stares at it. I think that's kind of the moment where John's thinking, I think that's the moment where he's like, the rose-tinted glasses are kind of fading. I think Rodney saying that, I think kind of maybe pushed him over his edge of like, I can handle emotions today. Like I can handle 10% of emotions today. And Rodney saying, I won't let you down, added like an extra 5%. And he's like, okay. He's like, I can't take this anymore. And because of all that, he starts to kind of see what's happening and sees Rodney's not insecurity, like pride for what it really is. That part always goes, the fact that he doesn't even respond, he doesn't dignify it with a response. Okay, and then a really quick, I also want to say, this is kind of after, hopping around, but when they're in the jumper and they're like, you know, trying to figure out like what to go. And John is so mean after he drags Rodney out of the bunker. He's like dead. I was like, he has shut down. And he's really mean to Rodney when Rodney's trying to help. And John straight up tells him to shut up.
Yeah. That's
Whoa.
rough.
Whoa.
I want to ask you guys, why do you think John is so angry? Besides the fact that they would have died. Like, why is he so angry? Like, even after when they're on Atlantis. Like, why is he so mad?
I think what Sam said earlier made it a lot of sense to me, that he's mostly angry at himself that he let that situation happen. Because when we boiled it down, it was kind of like Rodney manipulated him into doing this, into them going back and trying to figure it out, and it didn't work, and he's angry at himself that he let it happen, that he let someone get so close to him, break down all his walls and just stomp into his brain or heart or whatever. that he gave in too easily, maybe. Yeah,
and I think definitely that's kind of what it all is, and I can kind of see him, all of that they're repressed. Let me clarify. All that repressed trauma that he's kind of been pretending like, hey, everything's fine, I'm good now, I'm in a new place, I'm no longer isolated. Like, I feel like all that was maybe bubbling up. The war getting flashed in his brain of all the things, how, you know, he has pushed himself and he's gone over orders that he was given because he was emotionally compromised. And look what happened. It got Colin killed, or he still died, even though he went over and tried to save him. And I think a lot of that is kind of flashing in his mind as they're driving out. And I can also kind of see him maybe thinking like feelings from a little bit of regret, maybe, and kind of feeling like, I can't believe, like, maybe regret's not the right word, but sort of maybe thinking that choosing Atlantis was the wrong choice, because this wouldn't happen to him if he was on Antarctica. He wouldn't be in charge of all these people. He wouldn't have let anyone get close to him. If I was back there, none of this would have happened. And I can also kind of see him thinking like, okay, who else? Who else can do this to me? I could just feel him. I don't know. Maybe I'm just projecting, but I just feel like I could see him going. He would be going through a lot, and I could see a lot of things coming into him and sort of overwhelming him. And so I think at the end, we see that where he's telling Rodney, like, hey, I need some space. But I also think, again, his sort of affection and love for Rodney kind of clouds his judgment again, because, again, he can't even really say, leave me alone, I don't want to talk to you. He has to kind of soften the blow and make it into a joke and be like, I'm okay. You didn't just totally betray my trust. You didn't totally just bring up like 20 years of like repressed things. Like, he's like, I'm fine. He's totally that type of guy. Again, it's just Rodney holds all the pants in this relationship. And John can't even let him be sad for 2 seconds before he's like, don't worry, we're going to be friends again. Give me like 5 episodes.
I love how deep you are into his mind. Yeah. Really, really fascinating.
Oh God, I'm projecting. Me and John are the same. Like, obviously, like, if I was in that really like moment, like, you know, like, you kind of put yourself, right? And I think, John has way more trauma than me, though. That bitch is a girl. So it would be, I think, that deep for him. I genuinely think it would be sort of that way. I think he would also maybe try to block it out, though. He'd be like, that's why at the end he's like, I'm fine, guys. I'm fine, Rodney, I'm fine.
What do you think, Tor?
No, I totally agree. I think you're right. You were right to say that the anger was really self-directed. Like I said, it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing for him, this episode. Because I feel like we're so used to seeing the John that he wants us to see, the audience as well as everybody in the show, which is a guy who wears aloofness like a worn t-shirt, you know? Like, this is just, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about anything or anybody, and everything's a joke, and nothing is serious, and who cares? And wow, did he get taken for a ride here. in this episode. I think he's angry at himself, like you said, for letting people get close to him again. You know, like you were saying, Sam, he was safe in Antarctica. He didn't have friends. They were all dead. And so, you know, it's quiet. Nobody talks to him. Doesn't have to worry about anybody. And now Rodney kind of shoves in his face that, oh no, like I care about people and their feelings matter to me and their safety matters to me. And I don't like that. Yeah, it's oof. Poor John, this episode. It's a lot, but I agree with you, and that ending scene is hilarious, how he tries so hard to be angry, but he cannot help himself, and he's like, he's all smiles in the end, and he's like, don't worry, we'll be buddies again, just give me a week to, like, pretend to be mad at you, and then it'll be fine.
We're already going hella deep down this damn rabbit hole that is John Sheppard's brain. I also think it would have been so interesting, obviously not that it wouldn't work in the show, but just in general, I wonder what his next morning was like.
Oh, yeah.
Walking around the base, having all of the military and civilians and, like, just everyone kind of just staring at him. And, like, I think he would be very, very uncomfortable with the idea of the fact that everyone knows that that he was emotionally compromised.
Like, if people knew that it was his decision, like, that, oof. Yikes.
I feel like the whole base would walk around eggshells around John, Rodney, and Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Because they were all in deep. Elizabeth a bit less on screen, I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
But she's still, like, we mentioned the scene several times, but the scene where she's yelling at Rodney and the whole base can basically hear it. So I think everyone is just like, okay, our parents are going through a rough time right now.
Literally,
Better be careful around them.
They're like, Mom and Dad are fighting.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
I also think, well, I know we talked about already, but I know, Ash, you said you think that Elizabeth and Rodney would probably make up the fastest.
Yeah, I feel like it would take, like, professionally she would ground him, but he would probably try to, like, he would do one of those stupid, sweet Rodney things that you don't expect from him, but he does them, and you're like, dude!
Definitely see him being the type of guy to, like, because, you know, I think he mentions to John, right? He did, like, a whole apology tour. Like,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
apologized to
Yeah.
Zelenka. He apologized. We gotta talk about Zelenka. Oh my god.
Yes!
And then Elizabeth, and then he also he thanked Caldwell for. Oh, by the way, Deadless Ex Machina #1.
I know. You
Yep.
know what's ironic about that? According to Martin Wood, he mentioned that he wanted to do this episode because Rodney himself was too much of a deus ex machina. He thought that Rodney's ability to fix everything and his intelligence was too much. And so they needed to show people, the audience, that he could make a mistake and he could go wrong. But I feel like they just swapped Rodney ex machina with Daedalus ex machina.
Oh no.
I don't feel like the Deadless was, like, needed at all. Like, okay, like, Caldwell could have been there, but the Deadless could have been. What the fuck did the Deadless do at the end? They got away in the jumper. The ship was just there to be like, we're like helping you get home. Like,
Are you?
they could have.
I thought they were shielding the jumper from, like, the last approach to the gate so that they wouldn't
Yeah.
get hit. So
Well, yeah.
I feel like it would have been cooler.
Yeah, but
It, like, the tension would have been higher if it was, like, on John to, like, save them and maneuver so that,
absolutely.
yeah, instead of the Daedalus being, like, a big-ass shield.
I completely forgot about it. I didn't quite realize it, like, in the moment. I was like, what is happening? And then suddenly there was Daedalus, and I was like, I don't remember this.
Yeah.
I feel like I remember better them, like, making a run for the gate.
Girl, you could have just saved on the budget. You really could have. You did not have to spend the money to bring out the Deadless for 2 seconds. But I mean, I'm glad that, like, Caldwell's in the episode. Like, that's fine. But have the Deathless be under repairs or some shit. So add it like even more of like a, it's just you two going. The Deathless can't go after you. It's grounded. Have it be even more tense, where it's like they are literally the only two people to be on that planet, and there's no way, there's no help.
Yeah, it was so weird that if the Daedalus was available, why didn't they mention her before? Why was she literally just there for 2 seconds, to save them? Yeah, like these ex machina, Daedalus ex machina.
But yeah, I was gonna ask you before I interrupted you. Sorry. How did you feel about Rodney's apology? Thoughts, feelings?
I don't remember exactly what he said, but I did like that he apologized at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it shows again how deeply Rodney cares about the people he cares about. He doesn't want people to be mad at him, like his friends, and I think it was sincere and also kind of brave and for him. Because like we saw it a bit more in this episode, but he's not big on talking about emotions.
Mm-mm.
Like is Annie in Atlantis.
No, I think I agree with you, Ash. For some reason, I'm kind of blanking on like what he says specifically. I'm not sure if anything really jumps out. But I mean, we did kind of, going back to like 5 conversations ago, we did mention that he did do like an apology tour, right? He thanked Caldwell for saving them. He apologized to Zelenka. He apologized to Elizabeth. Then he comes to John and he's like, "You're the last one and my biggest fuck up. Like, I have to apologize to you." Again, I think it's nice that he tried. That he even said something. And that he even said, like, genuinely, like, okay, like, obviously, SG1 and Atlantis Rodney are different, but, like, SG1 Rodney apologizing? No way. And doing an apology tour? No way. They'd get one apology in, like, an email that he sent to all 5 of them. In the same email, so they all know they're in the same one.
And just like sorry, and then like RMK sent from iPhone.
Yeah, no, genuinely. And then he'd like hide out in the lab until like they needed him, and then he'd kind of pop up and be like, "Are you guys angry at me?" He'd do that. So I think again, it just goes to show how different he is and how he's changed. And I think he tried his best to apologize. I also think knowing John and kind of knowing the relationship too, I don't think Rodney would be like, "I'm so sorry, best friend. Like, can we hug? Like, I'll never do this again." Like, it has to be very fake masculine, where it's like, "I'm sorry. Okay, bye." Like that kind of where like John runs into the elevator to avoid any longer, or to see Rodney look fucking depressed in the background. He just needs to run away before things get too serious. And I think Rodney's kind of knowing smile at the end is just really cute, where after John's like, "Okay, it's okay, we'll be friends again eventually." And Rodney just kind of smiles a little, and he's kind of like, I think he gains a new appreciation for John's friendship in that moment. It was good. Sorry, that was a super long-winded way of, I think it was fine. It worked for him and John.
Yeah, I think you brought up an interesting point where, like, he wasn't grovelly. I think if he took that route, it would have made things worse. Like, I feel like John would have been like, "What the fuck?" Like, no, he would have been angrier. So, yeah, the fact that it was very couched in professionalism, I think worked in his favor. The thing that was interesting to me, though, was the fact that he said that he would hate to think that John's faith in his abilities has dimmed because of what happened. And I think it just calls back a lot to McKay's sort of self-worth and where he thinks that why people are friends with him and, like, what is his worth on Atlantis. And it's very much tied into what he's capable of, what he can do for everybody, and, like, his brain, without taking into account maybe that he's funny or whatever, like, they like him as a person. Which is always sad to me when we see a little bit of that part of Rodney But at the same time, I think, like you said, it worked for him because anything mushy would have Sheppard running in the other direction. So, because I think that's what he's running from, how he was feeling in this episode. So, no reminders of that would have been welcome. But yeah, I think it was nice. And it was important that I'm glad that John was the last person, and I guess the most important, because I think he hurt John the most out of everyone. Although, look at this funky transition. He certainly hurt Zelenka as well.
Damn, you're good. I was gonna do it as well, but you did it better. I love that we had the same thought. I'm like, okay, we're at the apology tour. We can go over to Zelenka.
Yes.
Yeah. But he would... Okay, I have... Again, it's one of the relationships or dynamics that we mentioned in the beginning. I think there was a lot. Like, of course, not as lot as with John, but I feel like, first of all, John, Rodney, Zelenka is an amazing dynamic.
Yes.
It's so funny. And I think there was one scene, I think we touched on it earlier already, but when they are just explaining the thing, and John is like, oh yeah, I get it, basically. And it just continues the thread of him being very smart, and them not thinking that he's smart. But he is. So yeah, I always love seeing Rodney and Zelenka just explaining something or being excited together about something. But I feel like there was a nice transition. I feel like if we compare like the scene between Rodney and Zelenka in the beginning and then in the end, there are again miles between them. But I think it wasn't that abruptly. It didn't happen that abruptly. It happened like gradually, a bit at least. But oh my god, that scene in the end. Not in the end, but when John and Rodney are already on the planet again, and Zelenka and Elizabeth are in the gate room talking to them. I think I watched it twice because it was just like, there's so much happening in that scene. First of all, I really appreciate, like Zelenka, I love Zelenka. He's so, I want to say underrated, but also just underserved in general and underappreciated by the expedition itself. And I really appreciate how he continues to try to reason with Rodney. And that was a point where I got so angry at Rodney for basically boiling everything down that Zelenka said to professional jealousy. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you really going back there now? You had such an amazing beginning. You were having so much fun. You were getting along so well. And then why does he keep going back to that? It made me really, really sad. The Rodney-Zelenka relationship always, at least so it seems to me, goes back to that they get along for a bit and then they don't. And I sometimes wish they would just get along a bit more and that Rodney would appreciate Zelenka's genuine care or fear for Rodney.
Yeah, and historically, we've seen evidence of Zelenka, being smart, fixing things that Rodney has broken, or helping Rodney when he can't do something himself, like in Duet. Zelenka is great in this scene for a lot of reasons. I think he's one of the only scientists on the base that really stand up to Rodney and are not, cowed by him or whatever. He speaks his mind. And I feel like Rodney can rely on him, even if he doesn't like to always be honest with him. So like you said, that line about jealousy, I feel like Zelenka would never allow that, if it even existed, which it doesn't, to bias him in his advice. And I feel like Zelenka's approach to trying to talk Rodney off the ledge was so good. Trying to couch his argument in professionalism. Zelenka's the only one who can talk to him on a scientific level and be his equal. So he was trying to explain to him scientifically why this wouldn't work, why it would be dangerous. And yeah, but I understand what you mean, where it's tough when it's very hot and cold, their relationship. And I think I would have liked to have seen their apology as well, like the conversation between them. Even if it might have diminished the John one, I think it would have been important because there is a lot of professional respect there, and I feel like they are friends and they are people who can talk to each other on the same level. So to have that sort of mending fences moment, as emotionally stilted as it probably would have been nice to see, to balance that out.
I don't know if it's his SG-1 side or if it's just another, like, I don't want to say manipulation, but I think it was definitely on purpose that he used professional jealousy as a retort, right, to get back to Zelenka. I think he picked the one thing that he knew would, like, really, I don't want to say hurt. I feel like I'm making Rodney sound so mean, but I just think in that moment where he's reaching this goal he set for himself, and he's like, I can do this. Like, I am near, like, he's reaching his peak almost in his mind. He's like, if I do this, like, I am the genius. And I think Zelenka trying to help him, and everyone's telling him, you can't do it, Rodney, you can't do it. And I think he picks an insult that'll, like, hurt Zelenka, or that'll get Zelenka to back off.
I thought, just now that we were talking about it, maybe he also used it, like, as a shield. That he was like, okay, I don't want to hear what you have to say. I better raise my shield and accuse you of being jealous. And what also gets me about this scene and about their relationship, that at first, Tor, you said that at first Zelenka approaches him very professionally and, like, explains to him on a professional level why this won't work. But in the end, he says, I'm telling you as a friend, and then goes on. And I was like, oh my god, they are friends. And I think their friendship or their relationship is very interesting because I don't really see them, like, hanging out in private for some reason, but I think they both think they are friends. Mostly maybe when they are working together or, like, working on a project because they spend time together. It's interesting. But I do like their relationship. And I like Zelenka being so honest and being able to stand up to Rodney.
Yeah, and he only really lets his frustration get the better of him at the end there. Well, Rodney wasn't the only one who was going through some rough relationship moments in this episode. We also had some interesting moments between Teyla and Ronon. Started off kind of fun. Didn't end up very fun, though.
Also, wrestling positive. I love how we get to see Teyla doing her leadership duties.
Yes.
While still being on the team. I think this is one of the only times they show that after. And I kind of forgot that she was there to help the Athosians make a trade. Yeah. And so watching it, I was like, oh, wait, they didn't just immediately drop the idea that, like, Teyla was a leader. They actually made an effort to show her, like, still helping her people? What? In my Atlantis? Continuity? That's crazy. And so I just love to see her in her element. And I think she really, you see her, she is in control for some of it. But, like, you see her, like, I think, shining. She shines in this role, which is what she does on the team, but we don't really get to see it as often, you know. But she's, like, making negotiations, and when Ronon, like, you know, he fucks it up, and he's like, they were taking advantage of you, and she's like, no, they weren't. She's like, I wanted them to think that. Like, it's a game, dude. And she's like, I was playing it. You were not. And then later on, when she's she like sets, you know, she listens to Ronon. He's like, hey, there's a meeting, go meet my friend. And she's like, okay, she goes there. And then it backfires. And then that's when we kind of see her, it's out of her control. And then, but she gets Ronon back, and she's like, don't ever do this to me again. Like, I won't tell. Like, I think we see a lot of her really positive personality traits in this episode. Some of my favorites of her personality, honestly. And so I think Teyla was perfect this episode. Just perfect.
It's insane to think that I think she basically has 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the first time that we see her. I don't know if really the first time, but one of the first times we actually see her do something just for the Athosians, and it has nothing really to do with with Atlantis. I mean, the Athosians are still on the mainland.
I think so, because she mentioned the mainland saying there's crops on the mainland. So I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, they need help or something, and yeah, she's making a trade. It's really cool and impressive, and it just adds another layer to how capable maybe Teyla is of managing life. I love that they paired her up with Ronon, but we've also mentioned that before. It's kind of the beginning of them being sent off by themselves. So it was like a bit tainted, but I was still really happy to have that, because I think this episode does a lot for their relationship, especially not in the beginning, but like when their B plot kind of starts, when Ronan kind of catches her in the hallway and asks if he can come with because he has to go, basically because he wants to get off the base. And I felt, again, it made me so sad, because they were both like, yeah, sometimes I just have to get out. And it was like, oh no, are they not treating you right? And they're sometimes not feeling quite at home in Atlantis, and it made me a bit sad, and I hope that changes soon.
Yeah, that was a really powerful moment to juxtapose with their sort of tension in the episode. Having them be able to connect over something. These are not their people. The culture is different. And so having them both feel like maybe they need a taste of Pegasus that they're not getting on Atlantis, or a taste of freedom away from the expedition, is really, it's nice that they had something to bond over, for sure. I think it's really interesting that Ronan felt comfortable expressing that with Teyla too, being honest about that, because everyone's like pressuring him, are you staying, are you gonna stay? Teyla historically has been honest about her feelings. Like in Duet, she told them, like they do things differently, but I feel like I can really help my people from here, and that sort of thing. So I like her in the role of like older sister and confidant and trusted friend. I think that is really established in their rapport in the beginning of their little mission.
I love that he would literally do anything to get off of the base at that point, because he doesn't want to be in a, maybe it's because he used to live in a city, I guess, on Sateda, but then when he was a runner, he was just like, maybe he's just not used to the confines of a city like that anymore. And especially he literally can't get out of the city because there's water. It's in the middle of the ocean. I get it. But yeah, it's really fun. Also, the line, only bring weapons that you can conceal. I think that's also speaks for the characters. I think it shows that Teyla is very, like, she's not stupid. She's also not naive, thinking that she can go in any situation unarmed. But she has to play her cards right. And I think she's playing them very well, so.
Yeah, exactly. She's smart. And I think, again, we just see that, I think, all throughout the episode. And I think she kind of is her best here. Also, this little side note, they're matching. Teyla and Ronon are matching in the beginning with the little beige fits. I was like, okay. Beige king and queen. They look so good. They look so cute. I love her coat, too. Her, like, brown, long coat.
Yeah, I feel like Sam brings up a good point about Teyla being at her best in this episode. It's kind of, I hate to say this, but in the absence of John, where she gets to shine a little bit, because I feel like as military leader of the expedition, he kind of takes over the leader position of the team, but he shouldn't really be the voice of the team. Like, that's not his strength. It's obviously from this episode we can see that that's Teyla's strength.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen several times that John is just not good when it comes to negotiating. he's the worst, to be honest. He's just like, no. But I wish we would have seen, like, I love that they have Teyla on the team. Every Atlantis team should have an Athosian.
Agreed.
It would have been great to have seen Teyla becoming more and more equal, maybe with John, when it comes to, I mean, not leading, like he would still be the leader, but that she would just have more to say, more input to give on how to act in certain situation, how to react.
Exactly.
But yeah, it was great to see her shine. Yeah.
Using what put her on the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Which was like her connections, her ability to negotiate. Like, it really should be more of Teyla always talking and John just kind of being like her bodyguard with Ronon. And then Rodney's like their little sidekick, right?
Yeah, this is basically what we talk about all the time. I feel like that they should have used Teyla's role that she had before the Atlantis expedition came. Like in this case, she's doing something for the Athosians, for her people, which is like, but it just shows what she's capable of, and I love to see that.
It's just the lack of, they don't know how to write women.
Or they're scared to. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do appreciate in the episode Teyla being resenting the idea that Ronon needs to rescue her from the trade situation. Like you were mentioning, Ash, like I liked that piece of dialogue and her asserting her strength and her independence and her worth as an individual on the team and not just someone that Ronon needs to protect. I don't know, I don't want to say that it was like a sexist thing. Like maybe he would do it for everybody on the team if he felt like they were getting bullied in a negotiation. But I think it was important for her as a woman to let him know that she doesn't need a protector and that she can do it on her own. And I think they kind of touch on this again in the future. And so there's sort of like some development that happens there a little bit in like echoes and stuff. We'll see a little bit of that. Her becoming a little more accepting of his like need to protect, but also him like trusting her to just be fine on her own at the same time. So that was interesting that they said that explicitly in the text. I'll give the writers that one.
Yeah, they get 1 point and minus 50.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm biased, but I do like that she asserts her position in that. But to me, it was a little bit reminiscing of the SG-1 pilot.
Oh no!
Like way back when Sam has to say that horrible line. Like, it wasn't that bad, but she was still like, I can't really pinpoint why it makes me sad that she had to say, you don't have to protect me because I'm a woman. I think she says something like that.
Yeah.
Like she does bring gender in there, not just, maybe it's just that it makes me generally sad when women have to say that you don't have to protect me because I'm a woman and stuff, or people not believing in her capabilities because of the gender fact. I like that scene, but also it reminds me of other things women had to say on the show.
That's true. I agree. It's understandable to feel frustrated 100% that it needs to be stated. It shouldn't have to be said. Especially since Teyla has been a character since day one on the show, and Ronon is just coming in. So there's no need to remind everybody about that. They should just know.
I did feel bad about Teyla in this episode. I like that she's the mom friend of the friend group, but again, it's just, she's the only woman in this group, and she has the whole responsibility, it feels sometimes, and it's sometimes frustrating to see, like, now she has to take on, like, the nurturing mother role. But again, on the other hand, I like to see it, and I think it's the scene where she half carries Ronon into, like, his ruin. First of all, he's huge. And she's still, like, and he's so fucking drunk, and she's still, like, we know she's ripped, but still, it's very impressive that she manages to lay him down. And that scene is so sweet because she kind of lays him down, and then I think he starts crying almost and says, "There are 300 Satedans out there. I'm not alone." And it was just like, my heart.
Yeah.
That poor big man has feelings.
And the fact that he can be vulnerable with her too, and he's comfortable, you know, after all this time being alone, there's somebody who, like, he feels comfortable expressing that stuff with. Like, he's a sensitive guy. Like, I was saying from when we first introduced him in Runner, like, he's really sensitive. And I think people don't get that because they just see that he's a huge man with big muscles and then are automatically like, oh, you're, like, tough guy stereotype. But no, like, he's an artist. He's got an artist soul. He's not afraid to cry. Yeah, I think he's definitely the most in tune with his feelings of everyone, maybe even more than Teyla.
Ooh, really?
Really?
Wait, you both agree?
Maybe. I definitely think that's that's definitely part of the reason why they get along so well. Is I think they would be the type to, like, I mean, after, like, Ronan stops sleeping at yoga, maybe like they do more like yoga, or I feel like they'd be the type to, like, get tea sometimes and maybe, like, talk about things. Like, I don't know. I could see. I think it can eventually be coaxed out.
Yeah, I just feel like Ronan has the advantage of his stature and his gender. He's a man, he's huge, and so even if he cries, no one is going to be like, oh, wow, like, what a weakling, you know? But if Teyla were to be more vulnerable, I feel like she's opening herself up to more judgment, not only because she's a woman and she's small, but because she's also the leader of her people, where Ronan doesn't have that sort of responsibility either. Like, there's no, he's not the figurehead for anybody. He just represents himself. In that sense, I'm like, oh, he's more safe to do that than maybe Teyla, who might have to repress that a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I totally see that.
I really wanted to talk to you guys about the big shocker, I guess, so one of the shocks of the episode, that there are 300 Satedans still around and kicking it.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on it, because I guess for me, I kind of dislike that they kind of took this aspect of his character and revealed it so early. Or this aspect of that's so important to his backstory, right? We just got Ronan, right? Like 2-3 episodes ago, maybe 4, right? And his whole thing right now is, right, his civilization is destroyed. He doesn't have any more people. He's alone. He's been on the run, like all this stuff. And I think by revealing it so early, they kind of took away some of his, like, potential emotional moments and some of his potential, like, trauma and, like, healing. Like, I think if they would have saved the reveal that some of his people are alive until next season when he finds his friends, and then they are the ones to tell him if there's people alive, I think it would have been, like, a huge shock, and I think would have changed it, because I think to reveal it so early on, we barely know Ronan, right? We're getting to know Ronan, and I think it's just so bad. It's just bad writing to reveal it so early, and I think if they would have saved this B plot for the fucking tower episode or some other shit, or just would have made a whole episode dedicated to Ronan accidentally maybe bring, I know there's the episode called Sateda, right? I think in season 3. So maybe bring that episode into season 2, but towards the end, where he finds his friends, and that whole thing goes around where he trusts and he's so excited to see more people, and then it blows up in his face. And, how that crushing weight would affect him when we've seen him all season, how losing his civilization has sort of changed him as a person, and how young he was when he was on the run. Like, I just think it's just bad.
I think you have a point. If they had saved the reveal, he could have had more emotional investment in specific storylines. Like, if he believed that everybody that he knew, like all the Satedans were gone, he might have expressed more sympathy for those experiencing loss on missions, and they could explore, him and his history and emotions and character through that more through the season, instead of him being sort of just in the background. And also, like, yeah, they could have explored him, like, Atlantis being his only home. Just to give him something, anything, in terms of stuff besides his friend sucking always, constantly.
And I think that's not until season 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's Sateda, the episode, and then there's the episode with, like, his friends. I think those are 2 different... Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Right now feels very similar to what we talked at length about in Runner, that they revealed way too much, way too soon, and they gave him all this backstory, and then like, okay, that's it. He's getting backstory, but no
No, like,
forward story.
exactly. Yes, you said it perfectly.
Like, what happens now, though?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like Ronan's, like, motivated to, like, be like, I'm gonna find my people, I'm gonna go and rebuild it. Like, they're literally nothing.
Oh my
It's
god.
as if nothing happens. He's just like, yay, I'm so happy. I'm never gonna find them.
It could have been like Daniel looking for Share, but like better. They could have done it better. Like this idea that he was going through the gate and decided to stay on Atlantis to find his people. They could have made that his purpose on Atlantis instead of him just staying there because, well, they helped me, I guess.
Yeah.
What else am I gonna do? Where else am I gonna go? Like, it could have been his, like how Teyla had explained that she's there to support her people, and it's the best hope for her people and Pegasus. For Ronan, his people are, he doesn't know where his people are, so it could have been, 100% trying to find them.
But that's not even it, because he was told where at least some of his people are. Like, they were, some went there, some went to that, some stayed on this planet, some went to that other one. I was like, okay, so is he gonna visit them?
Yeah, like try to make a not another Sateda, but like maybe settle together to rebuild, like culturally, to keep their stuff, their traditions alive. Like nothing. There's none of that. I don't know. It's just weird.
Instead, it's just a revenge plot for this episode, and then
the next one, and the one after that. All his stuff is
Wait,
revenge.
No, you're right, and that's exactly what they did to Teal'c. At times.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
no, you're totally right.
Oh,
I want to say, like, so far we complained so much about what they did with Ronan's story, but I feel like they took like one step up from Ford because they gave him backstory at least.
True. That's true.
Ford didn't even get that.
Yeah, it's something. They were trying.
it's something.
I just want to touch real quick about on Ronan's and Taylor's fight in the end, because guess whose trust got abused in this episode next to John? I so appreciated, again, I say that a lot, but I appreciated that scene, and I like that Taylor got to call him out.
Oh yeah.
On, like, she was pissed. She was so pissed at so many things that he did, and I like she threatened him with a knife. Like, girl. No, I like that she called him out, but I also like that it didn't end there, because he explained the background. He could have handled things differently if he told her before, but then she wouldn't have gone with that. So, but he explained where he was coming from. He explained why he killed the man, and then I really liked that she didn't completely retreat after that. Then it's fine. But she said, okay, I might have done the same thing. I feel like she didn't necessarily judge on what he did to the man, but she just couldn't forgive him right away, at least, for what he did to her and to their friendship. Because I feel like their friendship is still, like, they have a connection. They are both outsiders, kind of, on Atlantis, so they have that bond. They have, But I feel like it's still a bit fragile, but I also feel like that he is already important to her, that she has completely accepted him into the team, and now he's pulling a thing like that, and communication, good, more or less.
Yeah, I think actually it's a step well, anything is a step above Rodney and John, where, you know, Teyla is angry and she explains why she's angry, and Ronon explains why he did what he did, and she's like, okay, I understand, but also understand it from my point of view. This is how I see it. And that is why Teyla is the superior communicator, because she talks things through so that we can build a bridge and move on from it, instead of repressing everything. So yeah, I really liked that conversation too. I thought it was really important for them to hash it out right then, before something like that makes them completely write each other off, or at least Teyla write Ronon off. Because he could have been like, well, you wouldn't understand, and left it at that. But instead, he explains, and she gets it. She would have done the same thing. And what I think is super interesting and connects them even more is the fact that she said she would do the same thing, and that people on Atlantis wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
They wouldn't understand them for wanting to do something like that. And that they would keep it between them. And I think that was so important for their relationship. Like, that is the foundation of their closeness and their connection for the rest of the series. Like, this is why these two are so tight-knit, because they're so like-minded, even if they are really different. They're from the same place. Culturally, they're very alike. They have the same sort of understanding. But also, their ideas of justice is very similar. And what they're willing to do for their people. So I love it. I thought that was awesome and really interesting that she thinks that the expedition would not like that Ronon just straight up killed the guy. Super interesting. Even though they do war crimes themselves, I thought that was super spicy.
It's huge that she says that they will keep that a secret. And I was kind of surprised that she did it at first, but now thinking about it, I think it's maybe what sets their moral codes apart from the Earth people. They are in some ways similar, but there are also some things that are fundamentally different, and I think it's really interesting and really cool that they kept that in. It's still, I feel like it would create some friction over time that they have that secret, like with Atlantis, especially as they get closer as a team. I'm not thinking of Teyla Beth at all right now, absolutely not.
Wink, wink.
I feel like that would be something that would come up at some point.
I just want to mention really quick, I love Ronon's duality this episode. I hate him so much. I love Ronon, even though he gets the shit end of the deal in storytelling all the damn time. Jason Momoa just has such charisma, just on screen and as the character, I think, and there's a reason why he's a fucking mega giant superstar now. But I just really love, so really quick, I love his hugs. He looks like he gives great hugs. I would love a Jason Momoa hug. That would cure every single thing in my life, I think. That would rainbows, sunshines, amazing. Second of all, I just love how cute he is. When he's drunk in the beginning, he's like stumbling, and again, little Teyla has to carry his ass in, and he's so adorable, so cute, and then he gets all sad, and it's like, oh damn, he is sensitive, and he's traumatized, my poor guy. But again, I just love that he's so adorable this episode at times, where he's like asking Teyla if he can go with her. He's like, please, big sister, and she's like, okay, I'll take you with me to the town. Yeah. And he's so cute, but then he can also turn around and murder a guy in cold blood.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that for him. I love the two sides. I love both sides of his personality. And I think he deserves to do a will murder.
Yeah.
As a treat.
Looks like a cinnamon roll and acts like a cinnamon roll, but can kill you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just all of those.
He has layers, if you think about it.
Like an onion.
I also, what I thought extremely funny was the scene where, I think his name was Solon, thinks they are like a couple, and they are both just like, no. Like, I think Ronon looks like it had never even occurred to him. And Teyla's just like, no. Like she kind of expected it, but it's like, no.
All right, let's rush through this last part so we can recover from this long-ass discussion. Pass it over to Ash for the Bechdel test.
Mwah, mwah.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, I figured that was the case.
Well, let's go on over to... I know, that's it.
That's all we gotta say about that.
Yeah.
But, trivia for Trinity. So, we have a quote here from director Martin Wood for this episode. In an interview with TV Zone magazine, he says, McKay screws up royally and is unable to save the day. This story is a great character piece for both Sheppard and McKay. I agree. Their relationship is challenged in a big way, and both actors had to wrestle with the change in their characters because of it. It's a change that I think is wing-spreading for both Sheppard and McKay, and Joe and David really rose to the challenge. This is probably obvious to everybody, but the title of the episode is clearly a reference to the Trinity test, where the U.S. first succeeded in detonating an A-bomb in New Mexico on July 16, 1945. Again, relating back to the Manhattan Project line from Rodney and all that. According to writer Damian Kindler, Ronon's lines were actually written before Jason was cast as Ronon.
This is the 6th episode, right?
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
Damn, they planned.
You know what? That kind of makes a little sense, because I was going to say, I feel like there was some moments where I was like, I thought Ronon wouldn't say this, but I just feel like it was kind of a little more... I don't know, like I appreciated that he kind of added, he usually adds his own spin to dialogue anyways. Yeah. But I think there were some scenes I was like, a Ronon line, like a different one here. But again, he added his own stuff by like the hugs and stuff, and like he adds his like his laugh when he's drunk.
Oh yeah, this is another great Jason tidbit. According to Martin Wood on the DVD commentary for this episode, Jason insisted that Rachel, who plays Teyla, use an actual knife when threatening him so that the tension was more real. So that is a real knife that Rachel is holding to Jason's throat.
He's insane! Oh my gosh! Sir?
There must have been some big trust between the actors as well. Because he trusted her to handle a real knife and threatening him quite...
Oh, the Duranda outpost, where they're doing the science experiments and stuff, is going to be reused in another episode, Aurora, and it's going to be the ancient ship.
So the inside the...
Interesting. That's fun.
Mark Pawson, who plays Collins, rest in peace, previously played a reporter in SG-1 episode Chain Reaction, and a Secret Service agent in Lost City Part 1.
Ooh.
So, an interesting continuity error in this episode was when Ronon meets up with Solon, he says, "For years I believed I was the only survivor, but when he first got to Atlantis, he was surprised at the images of Sateda being destroyed." So, it seems like he expected there to be a civilization there at Sateda. And lastly, the episode in other languages, in German, it was called The Secret of the Ancients. And in French, it was called, this is interesting, The Forbidden Experience.
Ooh.
That sounds like...
Why is that so French?
Weirdly sexual and like not the episode at all.
I was like, The Forbidden Experience, did they like book like a private room in Vegas? Like, what are they talking about?
What was really happening
jumper
on that outpost?
Yeah. In just a back room? Like, what are you talking about?
Horrible. Yeah, and that is all for our Trinity trivia.
And then we, of course, gotta pass it right back to Tor for the Fic Rec Corner.
All right. So today's Fic corner is going to be a little bit different. We, of course, have our rec as usual, but we're going to go into a little bit of fandom history today. So, this episode clearly made waves in the Stargate Atlantis fandom, especially online, and there was a divisiveness, for sure, and fan reaction to this episode. Some people, like me, loved it and loved the angst and were like, yeah, scrumptious angst and all the hurdy goodness. And another half were really angry about the episode and were mad at the way that Rodney was depicted, mad at John for being so angry at Rodney for what they think was not a big thing. So again, a huge divide. From that divide sprang a sort of fan fiction trend called lemon chicken fic. This, I'm telling you, is a cultural phenomenon, and it was coined first by a live journal user, IIBNF. So, lemon chicken is referencing Rodney's lemon allergy. He claims to be very allergic to citrus. Lemon chicken, or other citrus-related food, is a type of food that might be served to him as a punishment, for example. So his mistake in this episode provides a lot of material for fan works that explore the consequences of his actions within the episode. They explore themes of forgiveness, trust, hubris, friendship, and generally feature woobiness, groveling, and punishment as a la lemon chicken. And, of course, Rodney's cuddly personality, I say with sarcasm. If you guys don't know what woobiness is, it's another fanish term. Typically, the almost infantilization or making childlike of a character who suffers a lot in the canon narrative of a show or a book. So just regressing them completely to a crying child in fic. So lemon chicken fic was thought to come about because it was sort of a fanish response to the feeling that the writers kind of forgot to make more concrete consequences to Rodney's mistake or actions in this episode. Because as much as, you know, John kind of says, oh, you blew up like 3/4 of a solar system, it's not really, they didn't think it was enough. So fans made their own continuity. And personally, I'm not a huge fan of lemon chicken fic because realistic characterization is kind of thrown out the window. That's not really the purpose of this kind of fic. I feel like if Rodney was being shunned by the Atlantis expedition, he either wouldn't notice or he would love it because it gives him a lot of time to work on things without anybody bothering him. So, yeah, I don't have a personal recommendation for lemon chicken fic, but I will link IIBNF's lemon chicken rec list in our show notes so that you can explore the diverse, can I just say, diverse portfolio of lemon chicken fic. There is actually a scale, a rating scale, where they rate how zesty and how citrusy the chicken really is. There's mild, and then there's like drowning in lemon. So you'll see when you click the link what kind of fics will shake out. However, I do have a rec based on the episode that is not a lemon chicken fic, and it is titled Sonnet for Robert Oppenheimer by Gaia. It's basically asking, what if Rodney succeeded? What would that mean for him professionally, a la Nobel Peace Prize, or personally? And what would it mean for the Atlantis expedition and their purpose for being in Pegasus? So think Absolute Power episode of SG-1, but a little bit more morally gray. and told from, of course, Sheppard's point of view. And that is this fic. Highly recommend. It's very good.
Wow. We went on a whole journey. That was a journey. We've already, exhausted this episode, right? But, like, it's kind of wild to me that people, like, hate it. Because even though we were, like, ranting and, like, we were, like, picking it apart, like, even, like, the Ronon stuff, but, like, it's still enjoyable. And I think I like that things don't always go well for McShep. Give me the divorce. I want it to be messy. I want them to be fighting and then get back together. But, like, it's just kind of crazy to me that, like, people don't like the angst. Or they blamed John for being betrayed. Or they blamed Rodney. Crazy. Lemon chicken, are you kidding?
That scares me.
That's kind of evil.
Not just because it reminds me of the lemon scale. Like, just lemon scale.
Wait, what? There's a lemon scale?
Of how to... I think it was, like, before, like, what are the ratings? For, like,
like lemon lime.
You're right. Yeah.
Yes.
You're right.
I thought it was going in that direction. I was so scared, but I'm still scared. I'm not sure if I'm gonna touch that, but yeah, thank you so much for that direction. For that piece of fandom history, I had absolutely no idea.
Oh yes, there's one notorious lemon chicken fic where I believe Rodney moves to China and helps them on their Stargate program. Yeah. There's
because China has a Stargate program.
It was very interesting. Very, very interesting. So yeah, if you're ever curious to step into a time machine and go back to the year, what year was it?
Like 2007?
Yep.
2006?
Pretty much. That is your portal. That is your way.
Love fandom history. Thank you. We learned so much. I think today, though, I feel like everyone likes the episode. I don't think there was as much outcry. I don't know if I've ever run into anyone who has a problem with it.
I mean, I love it for the angst. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
No, it's a really good episode, yeah. I think I gave it a 9 out of 10. Raises a lot of questions about, like, loyalty, about morally grayness. I don't know. So, yeah, it's a good watch for sure. Not every week, like you said, but it's definitely a very good episode.
I know, I agree. I think 100% with what Ash said. So I think I'd also give it a 9 out of 10. It's good, and it gave us a lot, and I appreciate, I know I'll often criticize SG1 for kind of, and it is all of Stargate, for not really doing enough episodes that have consequences. And you know what? I'm gonna take the little scraps we get. I know this doesn't last very long, but I'll take it. I'll take the things weren't all perfect, and that's what I like about. You can do so many interesting stories in sci-fi of things going wrong and things not really resolving, having to kind of work to make a relationship back to where I guess it came from. I don't know.
Here. I agree. 9 out of 10. My favorite thing about this show, like we mentioned in the episode, is characters and their relationships. And this one sure showcases all of that. And a lot of them. Like, almost all of them. So, I love it for that reason. I love the tension it creates. Again, this idea of the team's closeness being a detriment to the mission is always super spicy and interesting. Yeah, love it. It's great. A+.
Wow. If you made it to the end of this, can you tell us? Can you just give like a thumbs up sign on like our Instagram or our Twitter? Just let us know, because who the fuck made it to the end of this series?
So long, but so much goodness.
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today and just listening to us rant about everything under the sun. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Check out our description box down below. And check out all of our socials and our coffee. I got the Ko-Fi name in my head. It's going to be in there forever now. Coffee in our description box as well. Tune in next time for Instinct.
Ooh.
Oh. Bye.
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 All right, you clowns, listen up. I don't often get a chance to say this, so savor it. Good work, boys and girls. Let's go home.